we're just ready to start our next session, and I'm really delighted that we have Howard Llewellyn with us, who was the founder of Cardiff's Gay Liberation Front, and was also involved with GLF nationally. And I'm going to leave it to him to talk.
Right, well, thank you for coming today. I'm going to attempt to tell the story of Cardiff Gay Liberation Front, but I have to limit that to generalisation since I've only got about 20 minutes to half an hour. I've been a gay activist since 1971 when I first set up Cardiff Gay Liberation Front. Then I was 27 and now I'm 76. I'd have known before about LGBT History Day at the Senedd, I would have given this talk earlier. It is important for people to know of the struggles that gay people had to fight for equality before the more familiar events of the 1980s. Many of us who took part and witnessed the struggles of the early 1970s are getting on in years, and we don't want that knowledge to die with us, so I regard this event as very important. Cardiff GLF, and GLF stands for Gay Liberation Front, was the first campaigning group to be set up in Wales. It first met on the 1st of July 1971 and lasted for about a year. I started Cardiff GLF when I had a year out of studying at Sunderland Polytechnic. And then in the autumn 1972 I returned to college, eventually got my degree, and remained in the North East until 1981 when I returned to Cardiff with my partner George. In my time in the North East I had been involved in gay politics, giving talks in schools, setting up a gay teachers group, being interviewed by the local press, and helping to market the campaign for homosexual equality tape slide education kit. During this period, I was interviewed for the post of General Secretary of the Campaign for Homosexual Equality, but was unsuccessful. After my return to Cardiff, I set up the South Wales Teachers Group, Gay Teachers Group, which ran from 1997 to 2000, represented Wales on the National Union of Teachers National LGBT Committee for 10 years, was interviewed in 2001 for the new post of Director of Stonewall Cymru, and with Debbie Lane in 2002 set up a working group to establish a Wales TUC LGBT Committee, of which I became Secretary and later Chair. This was followed by several interviews with BBC Radio Wales. In 1971, there were two groups campaigning for gay equality: the Campaign for Homosexual Equality, which consisted mostly of individual supporters and very few branches, and the Gay Liberation Front, which had been formed in London in 1970. GLF was initially centred on London, but very rapidly spread to other towns, and particularly in the student unions of universities. The reason for campaigning for gay equality was because of the restrictions of the Sexual Offences Act of 1967, which severely limited the situation in which men could legally have sex with each other. This was because the Act made sex between men illegal in Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Armed Forces and the Merchant Navy, and sex between men was only legal between two men in England and Wales if they were over the age of 21 and the sex took part in private. If one man was over 21 and had sex with a male between 16 and 20, then the man was liable to 5 years in jail, and the male aged 16 to 22 years in jail. Over two males between 16 and 20 in age, again 2 years in jail each. So if you were a young male over 16 but under 21, sex was illegal with another male, even if he was also over 16 but under 21. It was not only these limitations that affected gay men, there were also other laws applied, such as that of gross indecency, which landed many gay men in jail, and arrests of gay men after 1967 continued. This situation made young gay men angry and frustrated. At this time, information about alternative lifestyles was almost non-existent, causing young gay people confusion about their sexual identity. The need to reduce the isolation that gay people felt was paramount and urgent when one realized the amount of frustration, confusion and hurt that young people felt about their struggle to find their sexual identity in a world swamped by heterosexuality. The following letters written to Cardiff GLF will show how this situation was evident in South Wales at the time. From a 24-year-old man in Cardiff: "Dear Sir, I write you in hope that you may be able to help me in solving a major problem which faces me. So gay people thought they had a problem. Well, they did in a sense, but society thought they had a problem too. I'm 24 years old and had relationships with a number of women, none of which satisfied me. Women hold no fascination or desire in me, or so it would seem, whereas men do. I enjoy the company of other men and have thought to myself that I'd like to go to bed with a number of men I've met, though this has never materialized. The uncertainty seems worse than knowing one way or another. I've played around with this problem long enough, I must find out. Is there anything I can read which would help me? I had homosexual relationships when in school which carried on into the sixth form and only ended when I came to college. I need to find a partner so that I can find myself, and here I ask for your help. I've started to write this letter many times since the article in the Echo, but it is not until now ever been finished or posted. It has taken me all the energy and courage I possess to put these thoughts on paper. I hope you can help me. And from a student at University College Aberystwyth who gave a false name. Dear Howard, your name was given to me by GLF, as was the address. I'm a student reading law at Aberystwyth. There are no facilities here for anyone wishing to join GLF, and consequently many lonely people. I would like to organise a group, but I do not feel as though I could. I'm already on a limb in my department politics-wise, and any other fuel to the fire would at this stage be dangerous. I trust you will reply. Then I had another letter back from him. Your letter reached me, missing the stamp, and also opened. Censorship lives indeed at Aber. I hope that you will forgive me for using another name, but one would have to live in the political and social isolation of Aber to understand why I have to resort to such methods before daring to contact anybody. There are one or two people in this godforsaken place that one can talk to, but they are, to say in the least, limited. And from an 18-year-old homosexual's letter postmarked Lampeter, because he didn't put his address on it. Pardon me with not signing my name to this letter. Cowardice is the reason for this, as I have no idea in whose hands this letter is going. So people lived in a world of fear at this time. I was prompted to write after reading a letter sent in the name of the Gay Lib Front in a recent issue of Welsh Nation. As both a nationalist and a homosexual, this letter interested me immensely. Through personal experiences, I know what it's like to have the laws and the law courts as oppressors. Homosexuals anywhere, particularly young people like myself, who are under 21 are forced to live on the edge of society or under false pretenses. I believe a magazine or publication of some kind should exist in order that gay people could feel less isolated. One's life is often under stress because of the existing situation. A liberating revolution is needed so that homosexuals everywhere can be accepted in society as all other sexually active people are. Please accept my fumbling and feeble letter of support. Fighting for the Welsh language occupies me at present, but I shall follow GLF with interest, although I doubt if I have the courage to support it practically. And then he just signed it, an 18-year-old homosexual. David from Swansea. Dear GLF, I would be very grateful if you could send me the address of Swansea GLF if it exists, which I enclose a stamped addressed envelope. I hope I won't put you to too much trouble. I really don't know whether I'm doing the right thing. I've thought about coming to Cardiff, but I can't really push myself into it. I'm very unhappy about it all. Maybe if I can find someone to talk to and very hopefully fall in love with, I will be happier. Anyway, hope this is okay. I really would be grateful to you. Love and peace. GLF also sent letters to local schools in Cardiff. Essentially, this letter suggested 10% of the students in a school could be gay, and that there was a need for sex education about homosexuality. Only one school replied, and that was the Bishop of Landers School. The reply said the contents of the letter from Cardiff GLF had been noted by the head teacher and the staff. Apparently, one school, teachers were falling over each other in the staff room in their frantic efforts to read the letter. Setting up the group. Setting up any grade group had its problems, mainly finding somewhere to meet and advertising meetings. In Cardiff, I was lucky in that the Rights and Information Bureau, RIB, at 58 Charles Street offered their premises for meetings, and we were particularly lucky that in their office they ran a 12-hour telephone helpline. It was also very fortunate that the local papers, the South Wales Echo and the Western Mail, agreed to advertise our meetings. The ad in the papers read, "End discrimination against homosexuals. Come to a meeting at RIB Information Services, Cardiff 4444 158 Charles Street, on Thursday the 1st of July at 7:30. However, one free paper, the Cardiff Mirror, refused to place an ad saying it would offend readers, even though the ad carried ads for contraceptives. Other means of making people aware of Cardiff GLF was by putting up posters in Cardiff and the surrounding areas. The first poster read, "Gay is good, Cardiff Liberation Front, telephone 44441 between 6 and 7. I also leafleted people in Roberts Bar and the Royal Hotel. And the other poster we had was this one down here. I think you can all read it. And the poster campaign aroused some instances of unusual interest. One person from Surrey saw one of our posters when he was on holiday in Wales and wrote in asking for information, but wanted it sent under plain cover. However, the borough engineer, Port Talbot, was not at all pleased about our poster, put up at the Old Andrews car showroom at 92 Talbot Road and requested it to be removed in 7 days. Otherwise, the town clerk would take legal action since the poster was in contravention of the Town and Country Planning Act, Control of Advertisements Regulations 1969. Apparently, the site was also plastered with other posters, but they didn't bother about those. A GLF group in the Midlands was found with regard to their posters in breach of the Indecent Advertising Act of 1889. In another instance, Owen from Exeter got to hear about Cardiff GLF and he wrote in for information about GLF, asking where the nearest group was to him. And when we put up these posters, we put up about 50 at a time, and they appeared all over South Wales. And about the telephone recalls received by RIB about GLF. The RIB office took many telephone inquiries relating to Cardiff GLF. One week, when we ran ads on 3 consecutive nights in the South Wales Echo, we got 60 calls. Of course, there were the usual abusive calls. Is Mr. Queen there? Is Mr. Gay there? And several nasty calls from skinheads threatening to come round and do everyone in. Most were genuine inquiries, including from one person who said he was so well known in Cardiff that he could not possibly come to a meeting. And another person who said he was married with kids and felt he couldn't come to a meeting. Calls were even received from people in London wanting to know places to go in London. Further afield, Cardiff GLF received a letter from Thomas in Belfast, where gay sex between all men was illegal. Thomas wanted to set up a GLF group in the town and wanted to know how to go about it. He asked if the police harassed us, and had we been prosecuted for our work, and how did we deal with underage members, which reflects what the first speaker this morning was saying about people who were 16 or under 16 seeking advice, and we could have been breaking the law. The meetings, Cardiff GLF held weekly meetings with a rotating chairperson. First we met at RIB, and then when the room became too small for the increased number of people turning up, we met upstairs in a Blue Anchor pub at the bottom of St Mary Street. About 10 to 20 people or more attended meetings with a hardcore of about 12. Many others came and went. Very few lesbians attended. Ages ranged from 17 to 65. It was a very mixed group with people from all sorts of backgrounds. Some wanted just a social group, others wanted a campaign, but underlying was the need to remove the feeling of social isolation and make people feel better about themselves. There was Andrew, a local sixth former, Mark, whose parents forbid him to be gay, old Fred from Barry, students from University College Cardiff and University College Swansea, Stuart, a forester, and more about him later, Roger from Roos, Mike Jarrett, a professor of archaeology, and old Dewi, and others whose names I've forgotten. Dewi had lived in Berlin and Barcelona in the 1920s and had been appointed to teach President Hindenburg English. Gay people who frequented the Showbiz Club, that was a gay club in Cardiff, and Roberts Bar rarely came to meetings. At the first meeting on July the 1st, 1971, about 6 people came to the meeting. One person was expecting police cars to be waiting outside and newspaper reporters. Most were pretty apprehensive, which was not surprising. Tony, who ran RIB, gave everyone a coffee, and as the evening went on, one could sense layers of stress falling from people as they became more relaxed. finding other people they could communicate with. 3 were lesbians. By the end of the meeting, people had opened up and they left in a much happier state than that in which they'd arrived. All said they would come to the next meeting. The nature of campaigning. The aim of campaigning was to remove the stereotyped images held by the public of gay people, and so much of our efforts were aimed at the media, writing letters, writing articles at student union newspapers, and getting news reporters to give a balanced report of our work. We were greatly helped in this by Harlock TV, who invited us on to 2 programs, one about the new morality and one about the revival in Jesus Christ. You wouldn't think we'd want to go attend, but of course we wanted to get our oar in. The South Wales Echo also helped publish an article about our role in helping gay people. The article was written by Ken Follett, who became the famous novelist. We also endeavoured to encourage the formation of gay societies at University College Cardiff and Swansea. We demonstrated against the events put on by the Festival Light, which was an organisation to fight moral pollution in the country, clean up TV, and rid the country of pornography. This organisation featured Mary Whitehouse, Malcolm Muggeridge, and Bishop Huddleston. On Caerphilly Mountain, which is at the back of, it's up there. On Caerphilly Mountain, the festival crowd lit 2 huge beacons and carried flaming torches and wore red armbands to warn the country of the invasion of moral pollution. At a prayer meeting in the Corey Hall in Cardiff, I tried to have a conversation with Mary Whitehouse, but she said to me, my young man, you don't understand. If you'd seen as much pornography as I have, you'd be corrupted by it. So how come, if she'd seen so much of it, she wasn't corrupted? Was she incorruptible? She and Lord Longford, to get the lowdown on pornography, went to a visit to Denmark. Lord Longford, when going through customs in England on his return, said his stock of pornography, which he had brought back from Denmark, was for studying purposes, and he was allowed to bring it through. At a Festival Light rally in Trafalgar Square, a man was asked why he supported the Festival Light, and he said, because I have sinned. How have you sinned? I masturbated. We also demonstrated against David Rubin's book Everything He Wanted to Know About Sex, but was afraid to ask. I gave talks to social workers at Pembroke Aftercare Service and to trainee social workers at Cardiff College of Commerce, and some of the comments from the social and probation workers at Cardiff at Pembroke meeting were hostile. I was invited to give the talk about homosexuality, and this is what I got. You're obsessed with homosexuality. There must be discipline in society. You are suffering from a persecution complex. Apparently the talk was quite successful by the guy who organised it. We joined a trade union march through Cardiff, which was a protest about unemployment, and we called out through a loud hailer, gay is good. Come to Gay Lib at Rib. After, we had a gay day in the Castle Park, and the photographs up there on the table at the back. We also took part in the GLF march through London on the 28th of August 1971, and protesting about the age of consent, and this was the first gay march through London and probably the country. I mean, people say it's 1972, but it's actually 1971. We also complained to Cardiff's chief librarian that books on homosexuality were in his office and not on the open shelves, but he refused to change his policy. Presumably he wanted to read them himself. The gay places in Cardiff at the time was the Showbiz Club near the railway station and Roberts Bar and the Royal Hotel. 2 matronly women who served in Roberts Bar hated their gay clientele and treated us abruptly and with utter disdain, regarding us as the scum of the earth. The Showbiz Club suffered a fire and relocated to a place in the Oxford Arcade, but ceased after a short while. In regard to the outcome of Cardiff GLF, in my absence on returning to college, in April of 72, dissensions took place about the name of the group and its way of operating, and in the autumn of that year, the group became a branch of the campaign for homosexual equality. Other GLF groups are established in most major cities in England, but in 1973, the National GLF office in London closed, and GLF gradually faded away, being replaced by the Campaign for Homosexual Equality. The main reason for GLF's premature end was the political dissension and the advert of more gay clubs opening and an increased number of pubs at last welcoming gay people. And eventually, CHE also ceased to be a political force, though it still exists in a truncated form. Right, thank you. So have you got any questions at this time for them? I'm all yours.
Thank you, Howard. Any questions, anyone? And I'll just come over there with the mic.
We all saw people like you, Howard, so very much. Don't you think there's still a need for a GLF or some form of structure to fight social and political inequalities? Do you think there's a need for that, or what would you suggest, do you think?
Well, I think over the years, people have got used to the fact that there are social outlets for gay people to meet and find partners. And I suppose that apart from the legislation, which we eventually removed after a number of years, but most of that has now decayed and gone away. The thing which is prominent now, of course, is homophobic bullying in school. And various organisations are trying to tackle that, including a Teachers Out group producing material for schools. And there's probably a host of organisations trying to do their best. But I think in the 1970s, people were really angry that they weren't allowed to live their life as they wanted, that they couldn't choose their partner, that they couldn't find a partner, and it was also very difficult. And just because you loved another person of your own sex, you got arrested and put in jail. So we had a lot to fight. Well, we had a lot to fight for, and we were very determined to try and fight. Unfortunately, politics sort of took over in the end, and people disagreed about the ways to carry out these protests. And GLF in London, I mean, has set up various groups which are very useful, which we now have and accept them. And we've got the gay bookshop in London, and there are all sorts of other things that are going on. The gay switchboard went on for quite a number of years. And so we set up the roots for things which grew and developed. When you think about what a gay person really needs, whether they're lesbian or whether they're gay, they're looking for a partner, they're looking for a life to lead just like a heterosexual person. And once they've achieved that and they've got it, well, maybe they've become less politically active. But of course, there's still a lot of unfair things going on with regard to gay people. Yes,
well, thank you so much, Howard, for all that. It's remarkable and inspirational. And I said this to you before, please publish the book. Please. All right. Please publish the book. And, you know, it's just a remarkable sort of cornucopia of struggle and success and all those things. And I just want to thank you so much for now and for everything else.
Well, there are many things I've had to lay down because I've only had half an hour to talk. I could have made it much more interesting and much more comical, but I'm afraid there wasn't time.
I know you've got quite an extensive archive, but a lot of your knowledge has not been written down. So I just echo the question, when's the book coming out?
Well, it took me quite a while to write this speech, and I must have been on with it for a few weeks, so I had to gather all my archives together, which consists of minutes of Cardiff GLF and 2 volumes of correspondence with GLF, and also going through my diaries for 1971 and 72. So I did, unlike a lot of other people, I actually did write down what happened to me wherever I was in the gay struggle. And I've now realised that those sources of information are quite valuable, and I do want to deposit them somewhere, sometime, but I'm sort of hanging on and saying, I must write this, I must do this, I must put it down. And I'm 76, and I'm so aware that I'm getting older, but I still have a lot to talk about, so hopefully I will deposit them so other people can refer to them.
Howard, it was, as one who was with you at the time, it was wonderful to hear your reminiscences, all the information. I'm really grateful, and I echo, it needs to be recorded. I've got a sort of a do you agree kind of question. We were very concerned about aversion therapy.
Yes.
And later on, I became involved with CHE in Hereford. And I always remember, we had a helpline, I always remember somebody coming from the hospital, absolutely drugged to the hilt, going through aversion therapy, and spent the whole day weeping because he was with my partner and I, and here we were sort of like in a normal unit, and it just really upset him. But aversion therapy was an affront at that particular time. Would you agree?
Well, I spent a whole year investigating this because I had access to the Newcastle University Medical Library, and I found out that well, it was going on all over the world, actually, aversion therapy, particularly in America, and then it was brought over to England. And there were various methods of treating gay people. Some of them given chemical emetics to make them sick when they looked at erotic images, or they could have stereotaxic surgery on their brain and they burned bits of the brain out, or they could have various aspects of behaviour therapy applied to them, and it did usually manage to mess the person up completely. And I know that there was a hospital near Cwmbran where somebody carried out this business, and there was one in the Midlands, one in Birmingham, and one in Manchester, I think. When somebody appeared in court charged with a sexual offence in regard to their gay sexuality, if they'd broken the law by being underage, or the ages that two people conflicted, one was under 21 and one was over 20, one was under 21, one was over, then sometimes the elder man was given a chance, well, either you get 5 years in jail or you go along to the local hospital and get treated, and let's get rid of this horrible disease. And many people opted for that rather than go to jail. The other reason that people volunteered to have aversion therapy, and the fact that they volunteered is very sad, but it shows the stress that they were under at the time, was that they felt very guilty about their sexuality. There's a well-known person in North Wales who volunteered himself for this, and he's appeared on television and talking about it. And he was laid on a bed in a hospital, and he was shown these erotic images, and every time he had an erection, he was given an electric shock. And we have to question ourselves about the culture and the environment that we grew up in the 1950s and 60s that we accepted, and so did the nurses and the doctors, thinking they were doing good by torturing gay people. I mean, how on earth people in the medical profession could be doing the things they did, it really beats me. But then they regarded it as a disease. So, I mean, it wasn't until the mid-1970s that homosexuality was removed from the diagnostics book of the psychiatric profession, where it was listed as a disease, and then it was taken out and not regarded as a disease. But some really terrible things did happen. I never felt guilty about my sexuality. I knew what my feelings were, and I knew what I wanted, which was a partner, and that's all I ever wanted. I never felt guilty about it. But unfortunately, especially if somebody came from a religious background and their parents weren't very happy about them being gay, well, you know, I know this person Andrew I was talking about, he was only 17, he was in school, his parents took him to the doctors to be cured. Well, obviously Andrew was a strong enough personality to say no to all of this and survive, but you have to think of the cultural and social background at that particular time. I mean, when I told my mother, she said, oh gosh, what will the people across the road think, you know, what will the neighbours think? And there was a clash of saucepans in the sink and a gnashing of teeth, and but eventually, you know, she had to accept it. Any more?
Howard, one last question I think we've got time for. I wanted to ask you, you talked a little bit about London GLF, and this gentleman talked about Herefordshire. How much linkage did you have with groups in other areas, and how much were you part of the national GLF network?
Oh, right. Well, before I was involved with GLF, I was a subscribing member to CHE, the Campaign for Homosexual Equality, because that was about the only thing that was going at the time. It's very strange. I didn't have sex with a man until I was 26. It was an awful long time to wait, but that was in Holland. And I suddenly woke up and found my identity, and then I got so angry that opportunities had been denied me to express my sexuality that I wanted to do something about it. And then I read in a magazine called She that there was a gay liberation movement set up in London. I went to one of their meetings at the London School of Economics. And I went into this room where there must have been about 200 gay people in this lecture theatre, and I've never seen so many gay people in all my life. In fact, I only met one, and that was the chap I went to bed with in Holland. And the atmosphere was absolutely euphoric. It was like getting on a rocket ship and going out into the solar system, and you got really fired up. And after this meeting, I decided I've got to do something about it in Cardiff. And of course, the other reason I set up the group, I wanted to find a partner. Well, I didn't find one in Cardiff, but I did find one in Sunderland, so he's sitting in the front row. Yes, there was the Leeds broadsheet, the Leeds GLF group sent out a monthly account of what all the gay groups in Britain were doing, whether they were CHE or GLF, and we used to write monthly accounts of what we'd been doing in Cardiff, and so we go through this each month and see what everybody was doing in the country. And of course, I had when I was out of college for a year, I had a very well-paid job, which enabled me to go to London nearly every weekend in the summer of 1971, so I could take part in lots of demonstrations. And I was on that first march in the 28th of August, 1971, when there were more police than us. And I think there were about 300 of us on the march, but in the side streets there were coachloads of policemen just waiting to come out and arrest us. So it was very dynamic, it was very exhilarating, and London GLF were very open and friendly, and whenever you wanted to go and visit somebody, you just had to pick up the phone and say, I'm coming to London. Oh, that's okay, Howard, we'll put you up. And that's what it was like. You'd be on a tube, you'd be wearing a GLF badge, and you'd see somebody else in the tube wearing a GLF badge, and you'd go up and say, hello. You know, complete stranger, but he was gay and he was in GLF, so you'd have a conversation. So there were channels of communication, yes.
Thank you, Howard.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.